So, this is my second time writing in this sub. I'm a female in my early 20s and I filed a police report and I've already told the story to those close to me. But I feel like venting about my piece of crap ex-housemate to you guys, and that it would make me feel a little bit better. Kareem is somewhat close to his name, so I'll use that. Now, I'm not very good at reading people, unlike my landlord. When I first met Kareem, he seemed polite enough. He was super tidy, filled the house with amazing smelling cooking, and best of all, he stayed out of my way. I'm kind of a loner and stayed holed up in my room with the company of my gerbils to quietly study and play Minecraft. We didn't cross paths often when the school year had started in September. He was the replacement for my housemate. It's a 3-bedroom apartment and I had been living with another girl, Nellie, for a year already. She was pretty absent from the house and as she was almost always at her boyfriend's place, and the third housemate had moved out. Early on, he was honest of his past that I should have taken as a warning, but took him as being earnest. I had asked him during the mini-interviewing process that Nellie and I were holding for potential tenants if he was 420 friendly. He was, but as it turned out, he was a little too friendly. A couple years ago, he had been arrested for illegal possession of weed and sent back to his home country of Turkey for a year before being allowed back into Canada to continue his studies. Now, I didn't know how this kind of stuff works, to be honest, but that's what he told us. I try not to be a judgmental person, since he made it seem like it was a thing of the past. I learned this was not the case. One of the first things I noticed in September was that he smoked almost constantly. Not to the point of missing classes, but the whole house would stink up multiple times a week in the evening. Normally, I wouldn't mind a little smoke, but any stoner will tell you that each strain is different, and for whatever reason, his weed had caused really severe panic attacks for me. Around late October, I got sick of his stuff and told him to figure out how to contain it to his room, and he said that his joints are hard to contain, and that he really needed a bong. So I let him borrow mine. About 2 weeks later, in November, Kareem said that he had broken the downstem, but that he would replace it. Within a few days, he did replace it, but it was the wrong size. Maybe it was a bit picky of me, but I told him to buy the right size, and he refused, said that it was too expensive. I mean, I don't know, it's my property and he broke it. He should fix it appropriately, right? Let me know if that request was out of line. What I know was not out of line, however, was what I did after what happened in mid-February. Around January, my landlord said we should start looking for new housemates, which was reasonable enough. Not to Kareem, though. My landlord had always been slower responding to messages due to the nature of her job, but he absolutely hated her guts for it. Called her awful things and every name under the sun behind her back, which made me feel weird considering I had been her tenant for 3 years now and we were on good terms. Before I move on to the next part, I would like to quickly add that at one point during the housemate hunting process, he asked me if I would be willing to move out so that his friends could move in, and that it would be super amazing if I did. Obviously, I said no. My landlord later confirmed that he had asked her if he could sign the lease behind my back. As I mentioned earlier, we had forged a good rapport over the last 2 years, so it was a firm no. Kareem had got excessively antagonistic about my landlord's deadline when she wanted us to sign the lease. Started at looking at the law, saying he legally didn't need to give her notice until X date, which wasn't true. He told me to quietly look for housemates and tell the landlord at the last possible date, which made me super uncomfortable since it was around midterms, and was secretly grateful she was pushing for the deadline so strongly. I just wanted it over with. It was shortly before I signed the lease with my new housemates that he showed how truly two-faced he was. I dug through our Facebook messages. The gist of the conversation was this. Kareem, can I use your laundry after I move out? I don't have laundry on site. Sorry, no, that's kind of weird. No, it's not. We'll pay you. We? Yeah, me and my housemates. Note, I never met these housemates before and still have no idea who they are. At this point, I started getting extremely weirded out. I said no a few times, but caved and started saying stuff like, I'll think about it, to appease him. Though I had zero intent of letting him use my stuff. It seemed like the best way to get him off my back since for almost a week he had continuously pressured me and to try to get me to say yes. Things hit the first of two crescendos when, the day before, me and the two new tenants I chose, super awesome dudes by the way, were supposed to sign the new lease. Back to Facebook, and again, an approximation of our conversation. If you don't promise to let me use your laundry next year, I'm going to make a scene in front of your housemates. A scene. When they come sign the lease with her, I'm going to tell them how awful our landlord is, that she doesn't care about us and is terrible at replying to our messages. If you let me use your laundry, I'll wait until they leave to tell her to her face. In other words, he was going to make my new housemates question my judgment and make them think that I was a bad person or something. Why else would he go off in front of them and my landlord and tell me she was a horrible and nasty person? He later claimed that these messages were a joke to which I messaged back asking where the punchline was, because I didn't see it. I felt like a badass saying that, not gonna lie. Especially since he never got around to explaining the supposed joke. At this point, I had a bit of a breakdown. I called my landlord that night when Kareem had left the house for a few hours, letting her know exactly what had happened, and what he was planning to do the next day, even sending our screenshots of our Facebook messages, and telling her that I couldn't let her and my new housemates come over in good conscience. Call me a snitch, I don't care. This guy does martial arts 3 times a week and, despite being shorter than me, could definitely send me through drywall if he felt like it. I felt threatened and didn't want to know what he would do if he found out that I told her, and was the reason signing the lease was rescheduled to a different time and location. She believed me, especially when she read all the text messages. Full context, nothing conveniently cropped. She even saw the parts where I was playing along and calling her names too. That's when she told me that she had seen straight through his act while he was signing the lease. Apparently, he spent half an hour reading and rereading our lease, which is abnormal, asking weird questions and being rude to her. After years of being a landlord, she could clearly see that he's the type of overly macho guy that likes to control women, but gave me the benefit of the doubt. I'm inclined to agree, especially looking in hindsight at how he's treated the women, me, the landlord, and Nellie, versus men, Nellie's boyfriend and my male friends, in our lives. So, I signed the lease with my new housemates the next day at a coffee shop, telling Kareem that it was out of the blue that we were signing elsewhere, and that I had no idea why we had changed plans, and I thought that I had gotten away with telling on him. Until my landlord sent him a letter from her lawyer that we had very clearly stated that he would not be allowed to demand the use of the laundry again, and that if he came back to the house after moving out, it would be considered trespassing. At first, I thought it was an overreaction on her part, but looking back on those messages, I can see why she made that decision. He angrily knocked on my door and shoved the letter in my hands when he got in that day, aggressively and quite frankly, melodramatically saying, "You betrayed me." I kid you not, those were his exact words. I think he lost his grip on me since he could no longer pressure me now that the secret was out, which frustrated him. Things then settled down temporarily. He would retaliate in small ways, going out of his way not to sort the recycling in proper bins, not cleaning out the shower drain, putting plastic and metal in the compost bin, and smoking weed excessively. They were small, but they irritated me. It was the day after he moved out that we reached our second and final crescendo, which led to the police report from the initial paragraph. After months of stuffing a shirt under the crack of my door to keep the weed stink out, and generally being freaked out to the point of carrying a small kitchen knife in my pocket whenever I left my room after the laundry incident, you can bet your butt I was counting down those last days gleefully. He said that he left a few things behind from the kitchen. He came along with a friend and we sorted out whose Tupperware was whose. On his way out, he spotted my mop and bucket. He claimed that it was his and that he wanted it back. I had had this mop and bucket for 2 years. Why the heck was he claiming that it was his? I said no and he started roaming around the house, saying that he wanted his mop and bucket, and that if this was mine, his must be elsewhere, which made me uncomfortable as hell. I diffused the situation by saying I wanted to use it, and I would give it back later. I was planning on keeping it. I am under zero obligation to let him back in. Remember the letter that said him coming back in the house after he moves out is trespassing, and he instantly snapped out of it. Later that day, he even said that I could keep it. Why he changed his mind is beyond me. The next day, Kareem said he had left 2 more items behind. I was irritated at this point. I just wanted to be left alone. I said I would leave it outside. I admit I definitely shouldn't have done what I did next. I was annoyed and I cringe when I read my own messages, but his reaction was completely out of proportion. Kareem said, "Yeah, I'll stop by in a few hours. I just got out of the shower. I'm busy, can't you come by now? Just throw on some shoes and shorts and a t-shirt, nobody's outside." By the way, at this point, my town had been on lockdown for 2 months. Since it's a university town and I live in an area almost exclusively populated by students, nearly everyone was gone and it had been a ghost town for weeks. I should also note that he had not been taking good social distancing measures whenever he was over, and had zero problem getting up close even though he had recently been to a much bigger city with a bad outbreak. Just thought that I would point that out. Fine, then give me my mop and bucket. You said that I could have it. Give it back. No. I put the 2 items, a tray and a mug, on the porch. A few minutes later, I heard a polite knock. I knew it was him and I ignored it. A few seconds later, a ring on the doorbell. Another ring, a louder knock. He kept ringing the doorbell over and over. Exasperated, I opened it and he stood there smiling. "Give me my mop and bucket." No. I quickly shut the door. Truth be told, I was worried he would try to stick his foot in the door and try to stop me from closing it, but he didn't move. He started knocking again, and ringing the doorbell repeatedly. At first, it was with some time in between, a few seconds, but it grew in frequency and volume. It went from firm knocking to louder, angry knocking. It felt like I was running a marathon, my heart was beating so fast. Since he started up straight up pounding on the door so hard that I could see it move, literally screaming, "Give me my stuff," over and over at the top of his lungs. After about 2 or 3 minutes of him being aggressive in doing this, I can assure you it felt like hours. He stopped and I heard this weird metallic scraping sound, like metal on concrete, accompanied by a grunt, followed by a loud metallic clang, and then silence. I waited for a while. I stealthily looked through the windows and didn't see him. I opened the door and to my surprise, saw that he had pulled my mailbox off the wall and thrown it onto the path leading to the sidewalk. I kicked myself for not filming the incident, but took my sweet time taking the perfect picture to show that he had made some kind of attempt to destroy the property. I mean, not much that I can do. It felt like the right thing to do nonetheless, and I still have it. I ended up putting the mop and bucket outside and telling Kareem to come get it, and I just wanted him to leave me alone. I even took out the battery of our door code since a part of me is paranoid it'll try to guess it and break in. He came by and took it, and I watched him leave from the window. He hasn't contacted me since. I saw him on the street the other day and he gave me a warm smile as if we were friends, but I looked away and crossed to the other side to avoid him. I filed a police report of the incident the same day, as advised by my landlord. She told me during our phone call that he had a documented history of aggression, and I'm not shocked. I'm surprised she gave me the benefit of the doubt though, and let him sign the lease in the first place. I guess this was a learning experience for us all. When I asked her of her honest opinion of my new housemates, she said they were trustworthy. Plus, it turns out that the guys and I have a mutual buddy, so I'm not scared of them. I told them about the whole incident and they blocked him on Facebook. They were super supportive and I'm glad that I filed a report. They know who he is and they won't let him inside. The thing that freaks me out a little is that he moved down the street. I can see his new unit from my window. I can't really say let's not meet again since we live so close and we'll inevitably cross paths on the street in the future. But I can confidently and without hesitation say, Kareem, get effed. So, a little backstory. I'm a girl and I'm not good with talking with people, and in high school, it was even worse. Also, and this is important enough though, I was a sophomore at the time that I had a free last period. My antisocialness was pretty bad. I would hide out in the library during lunch unless it was odd days, and my friends would catch me and they made me socialize. They were mainly my friends because I used to do their homework, but still good people. The first time I met him, it was one such time. They had brought me over to their big group and a guy that I didn't recognize was there. And let me tell you, dummy 15-year-old me even got the nope vibes from this guy. The creeper was named Craig. The first thing off about him was his hair. It was long blonde and beyond straight, like unnaturally so, almost wig-worthy. It was just a weird curtain of golden hair, which hung around his pale face. Secondly, his eyes were bright blue and beady. You could feel them looking at you and they always stayed the same, looking so cold and glassy. Anyhow, I had to sit next to him because it was the only space that was available. He seemed polite, and I was always taught not to judge a book by its cover. So I tried my best to ease the vibes that I got from him, mainly because everyone seemed to think that he was a great guy. What a bunch of idiots they were. Anyhow, after the first lunch, I didn't think much of him. I was dumb, naive, and frankly couldn't give a crap that every lunch he happened to sit by me. I decided one day because there was a breakup in the group, I was going to sit with the girls counseling my friend Jessica. We were in the hallway right outside the cafeteria which sometimes kids ate their food at. It had a stick out on either side where doors used to be, when it was a bomb shelter before it was converted into a school. A lot of kids used to use their phones there to hide from teachers. We sat right behind one of the stickouts. Jessica sitting in the center, me resting against the stickout doing math homework. The bell had just rang and I went to pick up my bag only to turn around and see Craig standing there, less than a foot in front of me. He had this blank stare and a small smile on his face. I oddly say hi, and pull my bag straps over my shoulder. He doesn't say anything and he just stares. I sigh, just waiting for him to ask where my friends went, so I could nope right out of there. Without saying or even blinking, he suddenly steps closer. I step back, swallowing and looking around for any help, and of course, everyone is rushing off to class, so there I am alone with Craig. He doesn't say anything, doesn't blink, and I'm staring up at him. He was a grade older than I was, so though I was tall for a girl, it really didn't help me there. I feel his hand skirt about the edge of my shirt and I jump into flight mode, racing past him quicker than I'd have ran before. From then on, I try not to sit by him, getting to the odd lunches earlier so I could pick a seat and get sat next to by my actual friends. He started standing behind my chair, resting his soul patch adorning chin on the top of my head, and letting his slender man-long-ass arms hang down and touch my hips. Sometimes when lunch would end, he would squeeze me, hugging me right below my boobs while I died inside. My friend thought it was cute and that I was blushing because I liked him. I started hanging out with Jessica and the hallway group more often. The wall thing happened again, but this time he had his arm out blocking me from running by him, because I was stuck between the stick-out and him. He had curled his fingers through my hair and was murmuring some stuff that I couldn't understand. It was a full 2 minutes of him going from touching my hair and rubbing my hip, all the while I was having a panic attack. And then the light bell rang. I ran and I hid in the downstairs bathroom for a good 20 minutes. I was hoping that I would go to ISS. I should add that I had been wearing long sleeves and baggy clothes and even turtlenecks after the first incident, but I also lived in New Mexico, so I didn't like the layers. And by now, I had told my friends about what Craig was doing, and they had tried to stop us from having contact as much, walking me to class after lunch and blocking him at the lunch table, etc. I'd even go as far as to report it to the counselor, who was basically my best friend. She was mad about the whole situation and the fact that she couldn't do anything about it because they had the 3 strikes rule. Craig found a way around this. Like I mentioned before, I had a free period, and I hid out in the library. The library was my sanctuary and I loved and still do love books. I would spend my half-hour reading every sci-fi, young adult, psychology, whatever books caught my interest that semester. I was in my sci-fi corner, which for one of the reasons I chose, it was completely hidden from the librarians and everyone else's view. I really didn't want to be disturbed. I was halfway through the Time Machine, a good book by the way, and all of a sudden I look up feeling like something was off. Lo and behold, Craig had a research period. There he is, without saying anything. He sets his bag across from me and he stands behind my chair. I couldn't breathe at this point. His hand instantly finds literally the only skin that my turtleneck had somehow gotten over. He smells my hair and squeezes my hips, his nails literally digging into my skin. Craig was mad with me, and I thank God that I had put my bag in the chair next to me because he had to sit across from me. I don't know how long he was standing there for, but when Craig stopped, I nearly died of happiness. When he did finally sit across from me, leering hatefully, while his icy eyes burrowing themselves into my memory, Craig hunches over the table, leaning over to me. "Can I ask you a question?" I'm literally petrified, so my brain wasn't working too well with me. "Yeah, sure, go for it. But for the love of God, don't touch me." He tilts his head, smiling softly while saying as though asking about the weather. "Is your mom a hottie?" For the love of me, my innocent ears had no clue what that could possibly be. "I don't know, I don't think so." I had abandoned my beloved book and was nervously begging the bell to ring, while covering up my hip with my turtleneck. He didn't seem deterred by my answer and smiled. "Well, what about your sister?" Craig chuckled. My jaw dropped. Even I knew what that meant. Out of the corner of my eyes, I saw this girl, a senior, tall and curvy and staring at Craig, with what I can only describe as pure shock. Thank God she was there. No, I managed to whisper as the girl places back a book and perks up, looking back at us as though she just cured cancer but it had bad side effects. Hey, do you know where I can find? For the life of me, the girl had no chance in hell to finish her sentence. Grabbing my bag, I jumped up and was by her side within a minute. Yep, I think it's over here. I led her to the completely other side of the library where he didn't go, and instead, she and I walked out of the school. The entire time, this unnamed chick held my hand. Once we were out, she had hugged me and had me talk to her. I told her everything about what had happened, and the woman told me first thing tomorrow that I should report it to the counselor again. I told the counselor, Miss Gates, again, and she reported it, changing my lunch and telling me to take my free period in the computer room. 2 weeks later, of blissful Craig-free days, and my lunch is switched back. It turns out since Craig had failed a year, he was 18, and he had sent pictures as well as lewd messages to a freshman, who then reported it to the counselor. 3 strikes and probation. Craig was kicked out of school and sent to the different university. And to the guy who had pinned me against the wall and ruined my sanctuary, you better hope we don't meet again.